Spelunky generates every level randomly. They're all good. Your random levels are mostly garbage. The difference isn't the algorithm. It's 5 design rules you've probably never heard of. Procedural generation isn't new. Rogue did it in 1980. NetHack did it in 1987. Every roguelike since has generated dungeons from scratch each run. But here's the thing most devs miss. The generation isn't the design. The generator is the design. You're not writing code that makes levels. You're designing a system that designs levels, and that system needs rules, or it produces garbage no matter how clever your noise function is. There's a term for what happens when those rules are missing. Kate Compton, a game designer and researcher, coined it. Procedural oatmeal. You can mathematically generate 1,000,000 bowls of oatmeal where every single flake of oat sits in a different position. Every bowl is technically unique, but they all look and taste the same. That's what most procedural generation produces, content that's technically unique but feels identical. A random corridor is a random corridor, a random room is a random room. Your player doesn't care that the RNG seed was different this time, they care whether the level is interesting. Let me make this concrete. Imagine 2 roguelikes. Game A uses pure random generation. Room sizes are random, corridors connect randomly. Enemies are placed at random coordinates. Items spawn at random positions. Sometimes you get a great level, sometimes you get an impossible one where the exit sits behind enemies you can't beat with the gear you have. Sometimes you get a boring one where every room is the same rectangular box. Most of the time, it's oatmeal. Content that exists but doesn't surprise or challenge. Game B uses constraint-driven generation. Rooms are selected from a library of hand-designed templates. Each template has been tested to be fun on its own. Corridors always connect in ways that create interesting routing decisions, not just shortest path connections. Enemy placement follows rules about difficulty, spacing, and synergy. Items are distributed with purpose, scattered across the level so the player encounters upgrades at meaningful moments. Both games are procedurally generated. Only one is fun to play more than twice. The difference isn't the random number generator, it's the design rules constraining that generator. Here are the 5 rules that make that difference. Rule 1. Solvability guarantees. Every generated level must be completable. This sounds obvious, and it is the number 1 mistake in procedural generation. Generate and pray. You randomize everything, cross your fingers and hope the output is playable. It usually isn't. Spelunky solved this in 2008 with an approach that's brilliant in its simplicity. Derek Yu generated levels from hand-designed room templates. Each room is a tile-based layout that a human being verified is traversable. You can enter from the left, navigate through whatever challenges are inside, and exit through the right or top. Rooms connect through standard exits and entrances that always line up. The generation algorithm arranges these pre-validated rooms into a level, not individual tiles, so the macro structure is always solvable even though the layout is random. You never get a dead end with no exit. You never get a gap you can't cross because the jump is too wide for the physics. The rooms are authored. The arrangement is random. That's the key distinction. Dwarf Fortress takes this even further with its world generation. Before you even start playing, it simulates geological layers, rainfall patterns, erosion from rivers carving through terrain, and hundreds of years of civilization history with wars and migrations and trade. Mineral distribution follows actual geological logic, not random noise. Iron appears near sedimentary rock layers. Gold appears in quartz veins at certain depths. Gems cluster in specific geological formations. The generator doesn't scatter resources randomly. It simulates the natural processes that would create them in a real world. The result is worlds that feel authored even though they're completely generated, because the constraints follow rules the player can learn and exploit. The transferable principle here is simple. Never generate raw content and hope it works. Either generate from validated components like Spelunky's room templates, or generate raw content and then run a validation pass that rejects and regenerates anything that fails your quality checks. Generate and pray is not a design strategy. It's a bug waiting to happen. Rule 2, readability. Players need to read generated content fast. In a handcrafted game, the designer controls exactly what the player sees and in what order. In a procedural game, you lose that control completely. The player walks into a new area and needs to understand it immediately, so your generated content needs to be instantly passable. Spelunky's rooms use consistent visual language. Spikes are always dangerous, ladders are always climbable, arrow traps always face predictable directions, and their trigger tiles are visible. Shops always have the shopkeeper standing right there with a clear layout of items. Even in a completely random layout the player has never seen before, they can read each new room in under a second because the components use a consistent visual vocabulary. The structure is random, the building blocks are always readable. Risk of Rain 2 does this in 3D with a different approach. Its levels are procedurally generated environments with random terrain, random enemy placement, and random item locations. But the teleporter is always findable. It has a distinctive swirling energy beam that's visible from across the map. The player always knows what they're looking for, even in a random environment they've never seen. The random structure provides variety. The authored landmark provides readability. Both exist simultaneously. If your player can't understand a generated level within 3 seconds of entering it, your generation is too random. Constrain it. Use consistent visual language for dangerous elements, interactive elements, and goal elements. Randomize the arrangement. Don't randomize the vocabulary. Rule 3. Constraint-driven variety. This is the counterintuitive one. More randomness does not equal more variety. Unconstrained random generation produces content that all looks the same because the distribution is uniform. You get the statistical average case every time. The outliers that make content memorable are exactly what uniform randomness suppresses. True variety comes from constraints. Dwarf Fortress generates mountain ranges using fractal midpoint displacement. Those mountains then create rain shadows. Areas on the leeward side of the range get almost no rain because the mountains block the weather systems. That single geological constraint creates deserts sitting right next to lush forests, which creates more interesting biome variety than randomly scattering biome types across a featureless map could ever produce. The constraint forces specific, dramatic, memorable configurations that pure randomness would never generate. Noita takes this principle to an extreme that has to be seen to be believed. Its levels use simple biome rules. Lava appears in the volcanic area. Water pools in the underground jungle. Sand fills the desert passages. Basic stuff. But every single pixel in Endriite is physically simulated. Every pixel of every material follows rules. Lava touches wood, the wood catches fire. Fire creates smoke particles that rise and fill corridors, eventually suffocating the player. Water touches lava, it creates rock and evaporates into steam. Steam rises, condenses against cold surfaces, and drips back down as water. Oil floats on water and is flammable. Acid dissolves metal. These aren't scripted sequences, they're emergent consequences of simple simulation rules interacting with the generated world layout. The constraints are simple. Lava is hot, water is wet, wood burns, but the variety that emerges from those constraints interacting in a procedurally generated space is effectively infinite. Every run produces situations the developers never explicitly designed. The principle is this: don't maximize randomness. Constrain your generator to produce specific types of interesting situations. A generator that reliably produces 4 distinct, memorable encounter types is vastly better than one that randomly produces 0 to 12 forgettable ones. Rule 4. Authored components in random structures. This is the Spelunky pattern, generalized into a universal approach. Hand-design good components, randomize the arrangement. The atomic content is authored, the macro structure is procedural. Rooms in Spelunky are authored by a designer who made sure each one is fun to navigate. Shop placement follows rules about accessibility. Enemy types are selected per area to match the difficulty curve. The randomness lives in how these authored pieces are arranged into a level, not in the pieces themselves. HeyGens does the same thing at a different scale. The individual rooms are handcrafted encounters with specific enemy compositions and terrain layouts. But the sequence of rooms and the order you encounter them across a run is procedural within constraints. Certain bosses always appear at certain points. Certain reward types are distributed according to rules. The result feels like a carefully designed game that happens to be different every time you play it. This is the most practical approach for indie devs because it gives you quality control at the component level while delivering effectively infinite variety at the structure level. You can hand design 10 great rooms and arrange them in thousands of unique combinations. If you're struggling with procedural generation quality, move your randomness up one level. Don't randomize individual tiles. Randomize rooms. Don't randomize rooms. Randomize the sequence of handcrafted encounters. The higher up you push the randomness in your generation pipeline, the more quality control you retain over the player's actual experience. Rule 5. The difficulty curve problem. Handcrafted games control difficulty by designing specific sequences. The designer knows the player found the sword before they encounter the armored enemy. The designer knows the player learnt to jump in room 1 before the spike gauntlet in room 3. Procedural games lose this control entirely. Random content can produce trivially easy sequences followed by impossibly hard ones, or flat difficulty with no sense of escalation or progression. Risk of Rain 2 solves this elegantly by completely decoupling difficulty from level generation. Difficulty scales with elapsed time. The longer a run goes, the harder enemies get, period. Their health increases, their damage increases, new enemy types spawn, and the density of threats ramps up. This happens regardless of what the procedural level looks like. The level layout provides spatial variety and exploration. The time-based difficulty curve provides tension and progression. They're two independent systems layered on top of each other, and neither one needs to worry about the other. Spelunky handles it differently, but equally effectively. Room templates have implicit difficulty ratings based on what's inside them. The generator selects from harder room pools in later worlds. World 1 gets rooms with simple layouts and forgiving enemies. World 4 gets rooms with tighter spike corridors, trickier enemy placements, and more demanding timing requirements. The difficulty curve is an explicit input to the generator, not an accidental output of randomness. Your procedural generation system needs an independent difficulty curve. Don't let randomness control how hard your game is. Layer a difficulty system on top of the generation. Difficulty should be a design input you control, not a random consequence you hope works out. So those are the 5 rules. Solvability guarantees, so every level is completable. Readability, so players can pass generated content instantly. Constraint-driven variety, so the output is interesting, not just unique. Authored components in random structures, so you retain quality control while gaining variety. And independent difficulty curves, so the challenge escalates on your terms. If you're building anything procedural, levels, loot, quests, enemies, entire worlds, these 5 rules separate content players. Remember from oatmeal, they forget by the next run. Now here's where AI tools make this dramatically faster. The biggest time sink in procedural generation work isn't writing the generator, it's testing the output. You need to generate hundreds or thousands of levels and verify each one meets your quality bar. Is it solvable? Does it have interesting encounters? Does the difficulty match where it falls in the progression? Is it readable? That's tedious for a human to do manually. It's perfect work for AI. You can use Claude Code or Cursor to automatically generate thousands of levels from your generator and run validation checks on each one. Does every level have a valid path from start to exit? Does every level contain at least 3 distinct encounter types? Does the difficulty distribution match your target curve? The AI flags any level that fails validation, and you can either regenerate it or trace back through your generator to find what constraint is producing bad output and fix it. AI can also generate your authored components at scale. Describe your design constraints in plain language. The room must be solvable. It must include 1 optional secret. It must support 2 to 3 different enemy types with valid cover positions. Have AI produce valid room templates that meet those constraints. You define the rules. AI generates the components. You curate the best ones and feed them into your generator. We're building procedural generation systems with these 5 rules inside AI Craft, with AI tools running automated playtesting across thousands of generated levels to catch the oatmeal before players ever see it. Join the community and build a generator that actually works. Please feel free to subscribe and check out the links in the description below.